Listen, just one more thing.
Hello there. Welcome to my review of episode 6 of season 5 of Colombo, Last Salute to the Commodore. First broadcast on the 2nd of May 1976 on NBC. This episode was written by Jackson Gillis and directed by Patrick McGoohan, both returning to Colombo. The episode begins with a small boat, amusingly named Titanic, making its way across the water, piloted by returning character actor Fred Draper as Swanee Swanson. Draper appeared in small roles in a total of 6 Columbo episodes. He sings as he goes, and it then cuts to him transporting a boat full of passengers who seem to know him. After McGoohan's stellar work directing his last episode of Columbo, it's a shame to criticise this one so early, but the editing here really doesn't work. The singing continues without pause, while the shot changes completely from an empty to a full boat, and it's unnecessarily disorientating.
We must cross the way.
Oh, Swanee!
As this is the establishing shot. As the boat comes into dock, they pick up the final passenger, Commodore Otis Swanson, played by John Dana, who was last seen in the episode Swan Song as air crash investigator Roland Pangborn. He is greeted by another returning actor, Wilfred Hyde-White as Kittering Esquire, last seen in Dagger of the Mind. It cuts again to the Commodore, who, based on the title, is likely not long for this world. This time he's having his photo taken at a party. The photographer asks him to pose with his daughter, Joanna Clay, played by Diane Baker, who obliges despite being clearly half cut. The Commodore is not enjoying any of this. He's upset because his boat building business is successful, but has been changed beyond recognition by his son-in-law, Charles Clay, played by a returning Robert Vaughn. As we saw in the last Patrick McGoohan episode, Identity Crisis, this one is filled with returning actors. The Commodore argues with his daughter and asks to be taken home. Once he's gone, Charles worries the Commodore is going to spoil the conglomeration of the company and says he'll talk to him. These opening scenes feel a little rushed as they try to cram in as much backstory as possible, but if you pay attention, it's just coherent enough to keep up. Rather than simply talk to the Commodore, Charles apparently murders him off screen and then sets about covering it up, wiping the murder weapon clean and arranging the scene. He's disturbed by a knock at the door from the Commodore's driver, Wayne, the only man the Commodore trusted, and it seems with good reason. Wayne is there to drop something off for the Commodore, and Charles takes it, then leaves with Wayne. He goes to the dock and speaks with security, confirming the time with him. A tradition in Colombo for murderers to set up their alibi by asking someone the time. As Charles gets on a yacht, it cuts to him in scuba gear, jumping into the ocean dock, and then to him on the Commodore's boat, dressed as the Commodore. He pilots the boat out, purposely spotted by the watchman in order to be mistaken for the Commodore. Then it cuts to him in scuba gear again, as he hurls the Commodore's body over the side while out at sea. Again, it's a little confusing the way this is structured, and not helped by the fact that the man who initially jumps into the water in scuba gear is quite clearly not Robert Vaughn, but he's supposed to be. So it's really worth paying as close attention as you can. We then cut to Colombo, Arriving at the home of Charles and a very hungover Joanna, he's there to deliver the news the Commodore's boat, or yawl, has been found, and he asks Charles if he would like to accompany him while he checks it over. Colombo gives a very thoughtful look as he walks away to speak with Sergeant Kramer. As Colombo goes to look at the beach, another detective arrives and tells Kramer the chief wants a new young detective to shadow Colombo as he works the case. Inside the Clays' home, they discuss what happened the night before, as Joanna can't remember, and Charles gives her his version of events. Charles then joins the other police, and Kramer shouts for Colombo, explaining the chief's orders, then introduces him to Sergeant Albinski, played by Dennis Dugan. Dugan was born on September the 5th, 1946 in Illinois. He began his acting career in 1969 in New York before moving to Hollywood in 1972. He appeared in several small roles in television in the 70s, including this episode of Columbo, and as Richie Brockelman in The Rockford Files. He would be cast as the lead in the Disney film Unidentified Flying Oddball in 1979, which was a modernisation of Mark Twain's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and in Joe Dante's The Howling in 1981. He would also have a recurring role in Hill Street Blues. In the early 90s, he would move into directing with the films Problem Child and National Security, as well as working regularly with Adam Sandler, directing many of his films. He was also married to Colombo guest star Joyce Van Patten from 1973 to 1987. He is 75. Albinski says to Colombo to call him Mac, and they all squeeze into Colombo's car, which, for added comedy effect, has the top down so we can witness the scene. Colombo allows Mac to drive, practice for if he needs to be in a high-speed chase, as Colombo says, and asks Charles the time, admiring his watch as he does so. At the Commodore's yawl, Colombo questions Charles, although as he has little to go on at this stage, the questions are fairly generic, and Charles is able to easily explain away the inconsistencies. Colombo attempts to scare Charles by subtly mentioning he's from homicide, so it would seem like he does suspect Charles of foul play. We then get a cut to black, suggesting some time has passed, as Colombo continues to question Charles. Again, it's an odd choice and may have been done for time, but feels a little haphazard. This whole scene is quite drawn out as they await the arrival of the watchman and Coast Guard. They discuss what could have happened, and the watchman confirms the log of the Commodore leaving. Colombo then speaks to Wayne, the driver, at the company shipyard, and finds out he delivered a boat part to the Commodore, a self-steering mechanism that fascinates Colombo. He also says the Commodore goes sailing when he's upset, and explains the hierarchy of the business. He then speaks to the shipyard foreman about some things the Commodore took from the chandlery, and then he asks Swanee about the items. Swanee explains he's seen the Commodore's will, and he gets something, but Charles doesn't. Joanna inherits everything. Colombo then inspects Charles' yacht and is quite taken with it. While there, he spots a young woman sitting on the yacht, practicing transcendental meditation. She explains her name is Lisa, and she teaches Colombo how to meditate, which he really takes to. For some reason, these scenes feel quite disparate. While they all establish Colombo going about his investigation, as he doesn't yet have a body, and there's no clear reason why he suspects Charles, it feels as if there's a piece missing that we haven't seen. Also, they all seem purposely loose in their presentation in order to disorientate the viewer. We also haven't seen him interact with Mac for a while, and it feels as if he's been a bit forgotten. As Charles arrives, furious that Colombo has been allowed on his yacht, Lisa explains that she works at the company as a marine engineer and architect. Charles catches up to Colombo, and Colombo acts as if he's been caught doing something wrong. He finally invites Kramer and Mac on board, and then Charles gets the ensign to explain over the phone how it appears the Commodore was knocked overboard by the jibe. And Colombo appears to be trying to make Charles feel very uncomfortable. Charles then takes Colombo back to the yawl to explain what the jibe is and how the self-steering mechanism works. Charles notices there's a nut missing, which might explain how the Commodore was knocked overboard. Back at the Clays, Charles answers the phone and is told the Commodore's body has been found. He informs a once again drunk Joanna, who is upset, and he tells her not to drink, showing her a brooch he gave to her, which, if you were paying close attention, he picked up from the murder scene. It would now appear that he didn't kill the Commodore, but that maybe Joanna did, and he covered it up to protect her. He confirms the identity of the body at the morgue, and Colombo says he was dead long before he went into the water. He says,
I was not the other person on board. Therefore, there is nothing that I could have done to the Commodore.
And Colombo challenges him,
But that's exactly what's been bothering me right from the beginning.
asking the security guard the time when he had his expensive watch. He and the sergeants then leave. This is a very unusual move for Colombo in an unusual episode. Giving this major clue away to a suspect long before he has anywhere near enough evidence to convict seems very un-Colombo, and further adds to the general disorientation I felt as I watched the episode. Finally, Mac is given something to do, as he helps Colombo figure out how Charles might have got to the yawl, and what the stencils they found on board that appear to spell sails means. Colombo then spots a scuba diver cleaning his boat and works out how Charles did it. Then gets the scuba diver to recreate the journey Charles must have taken to see if it's possible, all while Charles watches, out of sight. The test is a success, and he goes to inform Kramer and Mac, who are inspecting the crime scene and have discovered a broken watch and a lipstick. The watch appears to be the Commodore's and is broken at the time of the murder, 12:42, 4 minutes before Charles was recorded leaving the house. He also spots the murder weapon, as it's the only thing that is clean of dust. They appear to have their man, and again, in an unusual move, have revealed it long before confronting the killer. The next morning, Colombo goes to the Clays' home, presumably to arrest Charles. But no, the large police presence includes a hearse and indicates that someone has been murdered, and it's Charles. Finally, an explanation to why the episode has not felt quite right. It would appear that they have been dropping hints throughout that this is not a normal episode of Columbo, and the unusual way it's been shot and scripted is to subtly direct us towards this twist. Mac explains they don't know where the wife is, and Colombo laments how it was all so straightforward up until this event. Kramer then tries to comfort Colombo by telling him it's still straightforward. Charles still might have killed the Commodore. Then someone, maybe a partner, killed him. Mac explains they found some items in the fireplace, including some feminine items. Colombo then goes to see Kittering, the Commodore's lawyer. He explains the will further and confirms a letter they found in the fireplace was written by the Commodore. Colombo also asks Kittering for an alibi. Kramer comes in and explains they've found Joanna at the yacht club, still drunk, with Swanee at the piano. Colombo comes in and speaks to her. She already knows her husband has been murdered, but is too drunk to explain how she knows that, and can't remember where she was on the night of the Commodore's murder. Swanee says he brought her back from seeing her father around midnight, and she continued to drink. Some neighbours found her asleep outside after that and took her home. Colombo checks how long it would have taken Charles to get from the Commodore's house to the security gate, and it would have taken longer than 4 minutes, meaning he didn't kill the Commodore after all. He speaks with Mac and has a spark of inspiration. Then, in true Agatha Christie fashion, he gathers all the suspects at the Commodore's house. Mac explains what Charles did, taking the body out to sea dressed as the Commodore and dumping it into the sea. Colombo says he didn't commit the murder, though. He only covered it up because he thought his wife did it, and if she was convicted, he wouldn't inherit any of the Commodore's money. But she didn't do it. When Charles realised and started asking awkward questions, he had to be silenced. The stencils also didn't spell sales. It spelled Lisa S. The Commodore was planning to marry Lisa and name his yawl after her. She confirms they were going to sail around the world together, but she would only marry him if she inherited nothing. And he was planning to sell off the boatyard, disinherit everyone apart from a small trust fund for his daughter, and give the rest to charity. Colombo then goes around the group and holds the Commodore's watch to each of the suspects' ears. Swanee denies it being the Commodore's watch. Wayne and Kittering say they don't care, and Joanna says she gave the watch to her father. Colombo says that if Charles had changed the time on the watch, it would have only served to implicate him. The only person it gives an alibi to is Swanee, who is also the main beneficiary if Joanna had been convicted of murder, and he was the only one who said it wasn't the Commodore's watch, because he knew the watch was broken. When I first watched this episode, I had no idea of the twist and didn't notice why it had been playing out in such a different way. I only noticed that it felt different. I thought this was because it was just a badly made episode. But going through the whole thing again in detail, as I have been, I think it now makes more sense to me. I don't think that necessarily works in the episode's favour, though. To use an appropriate analogy, watching this episode for the first time is like getting onto a boat for the first time, having been used to walking on land. It seems to be largely the same, and yet the movement of the boat can feel disorientating. But unless you realise why everything is slightly off kilter, it might just feel unpleasant. And I think that's the case for this episode, which is a shame, because it's a lot better than I gave it credit for. Before rewatching, I was all ready to give this a 0 out of 5 for how it just doesn't work, but having watched it more closely, I now appreciate it much more. especially as the twist comes so late in the episode that you basically get a full episode with a bonus mystery at the end, and you get to see how Colombo solves a whodunit.
Because you were the only one who knew that the Commodore's watch was smashed, because you smashed it.
Would it have worked better if this had been played entirely straight and felt more like a typical Colombo episode? Almost certainly, but I have to commend them for the effort in doing something new and telegraphing it in such a way to be more satisfying on repeat viewings. Beyond that, it still has its problems. I don't think the characters are particularly well established, and how he catches the real murderer is not great. The key piece of evidence is very weak, and the giveaway is also quite weak. Also, there is a lot of brand new information revealed in this scene that hadn't previously featured, which is unsatisfactory as a viewer and could have easily been peppered through the rest of the story. I also think Mac is criminally underused. I mean, there really is no point in his character being there alongside George Kramer, who could have easily taken on a lot of his dialogue. All in all, it's an interesting experiment that I appreciated more this time around than I had previously, but it's still not nearly as compelling as it needs to be, so I would have to rate this 2 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.